Good afternoon. My name is Jacob Dakin, and I'm joined with Lori Williams. Welcome to our presentation, What Should I Program? The Pieces You Don't Know But Should.
This project began about a year and a half ago at ASTA in 2019. Jacob and I were sitting around and we were talking about how string orchestra teachers really needed a reference tool to help them select not just the more commonly performed string works, but also those works that are less known and less performed. So the handouts that you download today are the result of that discussion and months of searching databases. We went through the UIL graded repertoire list. We went through TMTPO, which is Teaching Music Through Performance in Orchestra. We looked at YouTube videos. We went through J.W. Pepper, Lux, Calmus, and so many others to compile a list of works for advanced string orchestras.
On this handout that you're going to download, you're going to see a list of about 226 pieces for string orchestra. It's divided into three sections. The first section contains about 98 overlooked works. The second section is about 76 commonly programmed works. And then the third section is about 52 works previously listed by Sandra Dachau's list of little-known gems in the string repertoire. Dr. Dachau has done such an amazing job over the past decades to bring to light some of these more obscure string orchestra works. We felt it was important to recognize her in these efforts here. All right. There's a couple things you're not going to see in our list. First, you're not going to see a lot of those Baroque string tunes. There are just too many of them. The list would have gone on forever. Second, you're not going to see a lot of these concerto, well, you're not going to see any concerti or pieces with orchestral accompaniments or solos. All right, with that, let's begin. Our first piece, and one of my favorites, is Jean Sibelius's Impromptu Numbers 5 and 6 for string orchestra. Put plainly, it's an authentic, tuneful, colorful, and technically non-threatening work that your students are really going to love. Impromptus was originally written for piano, and like the more well-known Andante Festivo, was later transcribed by Sibelius himself for string orchestra. Technically, the work is rated as a 3+. It begins in E minor, modulates to E major, and then returns to E minor over a period of about 6 minutes. It's muted throughout. The E minor section, or the A section, is characterized as dark, somber, and meditative. Alternatively, the E major section, or the B section, is a much more lively dance-like waltz that your students are really going to enjoy. The piece is ideal for a number of reasons. First, it develops left-hand familiarity within the key of E major. It's not often we get to work on those G sharps and D sharps. It also helps unify pitch and articulations throughout the orchestra. The piece is definitely harder for the right hand than the left and requires substantial bow control throughout. Because that left hand is simple, the teacher can really focus on the right hand techniques required of the piece. The overall piece is great for experimenting with shifting to achieve those darker timbres on the lower strings. It's also great to achieve a higher level of balance and blend throughout your ensemble. You can also explore dynamic ranges within a muted context. And then, of course, you can work on phrasing and tasteful expressivity. With that, let's give both sections a listen. All right, and now for the B section. Part of what we've been trying to do in this project is to suggest some replacement pieces for some of the more traditional warhorse tunes that get a lot of play. This work is an ideal replacement for Sibelius's Andante Festivo, which has received a lot of attention over the past couple decades. Impromptu scores and parts are readily available through Lux Music at around $110 for a set. High quality recordings are available through YouTube. Finally, this is a work that you can play with small chamber ensembles or even a high-level middle school orchestra. Another of my favorite pieces in the string orchestra literature is Sir Edward Elgar's Elegy for Strings. Like Impromptu, it's slow and somber. This time, however, we're working in the flat keys. This is a romantic work rated at a grade 4 because it uses E flat and A flat major. The piece also requires string players to develop a choral-like blend within the ensemble. Elgar was renowned for his choral writing abilities, and through the elegy, string ensembles get a chance to play in that unique style. This piece is ideal for a number of reasons. First, it's great for developing left-hand familiarity with flats, namely A flat and D flat. It's also great for developing bow control within a piano dynamic, slow tempo, expressive musical lines, and stark dynamic contrasts. It's great for developing students' understanding of blend and balance and intonation within that muted choral-like ensemble sound. It's also great for teaching arch form, which is A, B, C, return B, return A. Teachers can also experiment with non-vibrato and a light shifting in the first, second, and third, and for cello's fourth position to really bring out those darker textures in the piece. If you would like, you may now pause the video to retrieve a score of Elegy from IMSLP using the link provided below. Let's give the Elegy a listen. Usually when we're looking for a reflective piece of some sort, we tend to turn to the Barber Adagio for strings. This piece is much easier than Barber's Adagio, and yet has a similar effect. Both are also in arch form. Scores are available through IMSLP, quality recordings are available through YouTube, and this piece is ideal for small chamber groups. Moving on to a larger work, German composer Robert Volkmann wrote 3 serenades for string orchestra, all romantic in style. Serenade number 2 is the easiest of the 3. Number 1 is equally beautiful yet more technically demanding. Number 3 is more like a cello concerto. Some general notes about Serenade number 2. Movements 1, 2, and 4 are grade 4 pieces given their homorhythmic choral-like writing and limited shifting. Of these, the scherzo second movement is a student favorite for its catchy melody and rhythmic drive throughout. Movement 1 is a chorale and a waltz. Movement 4 is a fast march. Movement 3 is a second waltz. It's an easy grade 5 for its chromatic left-hand flourishes, subtle right-hand articulations in triple meter, and fragmented melodic material swapped between sections, similar to the works of Tchaikovsky. If needed, the work can be successfully performed without that third movement. The piece works on a number of things. First, It provides a safe platform for students to work on lightening and unifying their articulations throughout the ensemble. Students can also work on shifting from those lower to middle positions, again, all within that safe technical context. It's great for developing intonation in those choral-like sections, as well as those octave displacements and those close choral writing um, throughout all the movements. Violists are going to be challenged by the third movement, and all the players are really going to get a chance to develop their independence given the excessive use of divisi throughout. If you would like, you can now pause the video to retrieve a score of Serenade number 2 from IMSLP using the link below. All right, let's give the second movement a listen. Serenade number 2 is an ideal replacement for the Holst St. Paul's Suite or Elgar's Serenade for strings. It could also precede Mozartian works as a means of preparing lighter right-hand bow strokes in a technically less demanding setting. Scores are available on IMSLP. Parts are only available through Lux or some other publisher's site, and they're usually around $57. There are high-quality recordings available through YouTube, and this work can also be played by small chamber ensembles, assuming that all the divisi parts are covered. Next, the British composer Gerald Finzi wrote 2 postmodern neo-romantic works for string orchestra, his Romance, Opus 5, and his Prelude, Opus 25. Both are really beautiful works. The Prelude is in F minor and D minor, 2/4 time, and lasts approximately 5 minutes and 30 seconds. What I like most about this work is that it offers students a chance to really delve into melodic yet dissonant characteristics of postmodern neo-romantic English works while still playing something that they enjoy. The melodies and the harmonies throughout are really rich and full, with hints of dissonance peeking out periodically. The piece is ideal for working in the keys of F and D minor at a slow tempo. It's also great for working on player independence on parts, given the divises throughout, really in every part except the bass. All the parts are also equal in difficulty, so you're going to need to make sure that your sections are pretty well rounded. The range throughout is low to middle, exploring 1st through 5th position, and there's not a lot of high position work in any of the parts. However, given the keys and the darker timbres, significant shifting in the lower strings is going to be recommended. The piece overall is not really rhythmically complex. This allows for a significant exploration of unified articulations, blend, as well as balance. There's also a violin and a viola and cello trio in the B section, so you'll want to make sure that you have some strong principal players in those sections. The most demanding of the solos is going to be the concertmaster solo. So you're going to want to make sure that that player has a strong tone and skill in the middle positions. All right, let's listen to a little bit. All right, this is a great replacement for Vaughan Williams' Green Sleeves, Rosa Midre, or other nationalistic English pieces in the early 20th century. Parts and scores are readily available through Lux Music for around $71. There are high quality recordings available through YouTube. This piece can also be played by small chamber ensembles, assuming that all the Debussy parts are covered. There's a string quartet arrangement that is available through Boozy and Hawkes. Moving on, Gioacchino Rossini wrote 6 sonatas for 2 violins, cello, and double bass, all in the classical style. One is in G major, the others are in A, C, B flat, E flat, and D major respectively. It's a wonder why he excluded the viola. Perhaps it's because they were written in 1804 when he was only 12 years old, and he wasn't interested in writing for the alto clef at that stage in his compositional development. That said, all 6 sonatas are wonderful, but number 2 in A major is really my favorite. Sonata number 2 is in 3 movements: Allegro, Andante, Allegro. The first movement is a sonata allegro form and really tests students' ability to play their A major scales and arpeggios. The second movement is in A minor. It's really operatic and highly dramatic. The third movement is a fun and lighter piece. It makes use of ornamentation without being too technically demanding. The piece as a whole is ideal for developing those classical articulations such as spiccato, collé, staccatissimo. It's also great for learning A major, those G sharps especially. We get to work extensively in the keys of G and D and often need more practice in playing in those sharp keys. The first and second violin parts throughout are equally demanding, so your second violins really can't hide here. There's a lot of operatic expression through this thing, so really the more dramatic you can make this piece, the better. This piece really works on dynamic contrast and phrasing. Students can explore and attempt to realize their own interpretations of the work, given its natural, expressive, yet simplistic elements. If you would like, you can now pause the video to retrieve a score of Sonata number 2 from IMSLP using the link below. All right, let's listen to the second movement. Like Volkmann's Serenade, this sonata is great preparation for the works of Mozart, especially with regards to preparing those spiccato, bow strokes, the brush stroke, collé, and staccato. Parts and scores are readily available through IMSLP. The viola parts are also available, even though they weren't there originally, through Lux Music. There are high quality recordings available through YouTube, and these sonatas are ideal for the more advanced string quartets and can include their double bass. My final work is Asger Hamrick's Symphony Spirituelle No. 6, Opus 38. Danish composer Asger Hamrick wrote Symphony No. 6 for strings in 1897 to celebrate his 25th year as the director of the Peabody Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. This is a late Romantic symphony written in G major, and it contains 4 contrasting movements. The first is an allegro moderato that's in sonata form. The second movement is a rhythmically driving allegro molto vivace scherzo reminiscent of the work of Beethoven, with a series of lyrical folkish interludes woven throughout. The third movement is a theme in variations marked andante sostenuto that begins with a lullaby folk melody in the violas. That theme is then passed around the orchestra in a variety of variations and instrumentations. The fourth movement is allegro con spirito. It's fast and it really puts your basses to work. The work in total is approximately 30 minutes in length. Let's listen to the second and fourth movements. And here's the fourth movement. Although Hamrick's work bears no one significant influence, it has been likened to the symphonies of Beethoven, Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings, and Elgar's Introduction and Allegro. Thus, this work would be an ideal substitute for either the Tchaikovsky or the Elgar. Technically, the symphony is demanding, but no more so than the Tchaikovsky Serenade. Parts are available through Lux Music for around $98, and recordings can be found on YouTube. It's not necessarily recommended for a small chamber ensemble. All right, now over to my colleague, Lori.
Thanks, Jacob, for sharing those pieces with us. And now we're on to the pieces that I've chosen for us today, most of which are going to be from contemporary composers. That brings me to the topic of rental music. I know a lot of us shy away from using rental music, but sometimes really the opportunities to introduce our students to music from diverse composers and the educational opportunities in there are just, they outweigh the negatives from the rental. So I'm going to encourage you, if you've never rented a piece of music before, to go ahead and start looking into it. And with that, that actually brings me to the very first piece that I want to share with you. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to talk about the Akutagawa triptych for strings. Yasushi Akutagawa was Japanese, and he wrote this particular piece in 1983. He was an enormous fan of Shostakovich, so much so that he even snuck into the USSR the year after he wrote this particular work so he could meet Shostakovich, and there he also became friends with Khachaturian and Kabalevsky. His music, in fact, Akutagawa's, was the only Japanese composer's music that was even published or available in the USSR for many, many years. He was highly devoted to the education of amateur orchestras, and it really shows in his writing. So this particular piece is a grade 5. The score is available at sheetmusicplus.com. But you can also rent the parts from Carl Fisher. This is a 3-movement work. The first movement is highly chromatic, but it's also really teachable. The opening melody is in unison, and the chromatics are definitely manageable. There's nothing above third position for the first violin, except for the 8-bar solo violin part. And then the most challenging line is really found in that solo part in this first movement. The second movement is gosh, it's the true gem of this work. It will stick with you for a long time. The violas open the movement with a poignant melody, and then this just truly lovely melody is punctuated with these percussive pizzicato and then knocks to the body of the instrument in the lower strings. And then he did use this movement because it's slower and more lyrical for some position work. So say the top note for first violin is an A flat. The violas also have a small treble clef section, but it only goes up into third position. And then the final movement of this, the presto, is intensely rhythmic, and it has frequently shifting time signatures. And but the 8th note remains steady throughout, so that makes it a little more playing, and it looks and it sounds more challenging than it actually is. Then you get a little bit of that chromaticism that comes back. There's a 14-bar adagio that happens in the middle of that last movement, and then he sneaks it in again just right before the very end, and it just has this big romping stomping into it. One of the more challenging things about this music is that rarely does he put the root of the chord in the bass line. All of the movements are based on rhythmic motives as well. But the cool thing is everybody in the orchestra has something really fun to play in this. So here's the first movement. So we're all in unison, including the basses. Now it's the part work. There's the first violin solo. Okay, I would love to play more of that for you, but I need to move on. This is the Berceuse. At 19 on this page where you see the arpeggiated chords in the violas, that will carry on into the cellos later on. All right, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the third movement. This is from the second page of the last movement. All right, that is just a spectacular piece. It's ideally suited for, as I said before, teaching chromatics, lyricism that moves through all of the lines, arpeggiated chords, duple to triple meter changes, and any of these movements will work really well as a standalone piece. It's just super fun and beautifully written. All right, now I'm going to move on to the Connie Ellisor Conversations in Silence. Connie is a living composer, and she is actually based in the Nashville area. I should also tell you that she writes for educational purposes, so you can contact her through her website, which is at the bottom of the slide here, and you can commission her to write a work, or you can buy one of her existing works. In fact, if you want to see the score to Conversations in Silence, she has the entire score, so you can just scroll through it at the bottom of the page while you're listening to the recordings. And the recordings that I'm going to play for you today are from the Arlington High School Orchestra. It's from their ASTA NOF performance from 2012. Just in case you think this might be too hard for a high school group to play, this is proof that it's not. One of the things that I love about this particular work is that it's very Bartokian in its flavor, but she blends in these Americana kind of folk melodies and sounds. And so it's just incredibly unique and very, very cool. Another thing I really like about this work is that they are short movements. They're great to stand alone, or you can play them in any combination of works that you would like to do them in. I'm going to go ahead and play the first movement. If you want to follow along on the score, just pull up that link at the bottom of the screen. See if I can get this to play. There we go. This is the first movement. Okay, that gives you a good idea of the first movement. Here's the second movement. I love this one. It almost has like a Gershwin feel to it. Okay, here is the third movement. And believe it or not, there is an actual like Viennese kind of waltz that's very schmaltzy that happens in the middle of that. It just makes that movement super fun. And then here's the last movement of it. This is the hardest movement. So I had to play a little of that just so you could hear that this one really is a challenging piece. But the great thing about it is you could play any of these movements by themselves. All right, now I'm going to move to a not so contemporary piece, but one that I don't think very many of us know very well. This is the Brooks Serenade on Swedish Folk Melodies. It is available on IMSLP, but you can also purchase it from Boosie and Hawks when you're looking for those original scores for contests. This is a 5-movement work. I call it a grade 5, but it really could also be considered a grade 4 depending on what you're playing in this piece. The first movement and the last movement are almost identical. It's a march. And so they're pretty much the same piece. He just brought it back to end and round out the entire performance. So the form is ABCDA. The second movement is really a very fun. I'm just going to go ahead and start playing some of these. If you want to look up the score, I've got it there below. This is the first movement here. So if you're looking for something that's not as challenging, this would be a good choice. Here's the second movement. Just absolutely gorgeous and lush. There are divisi parts in every section, so it's important to note that. This one would not work as well in a small group just because you've got to have enough players to fill out all the parts. Here's a little of the third movement. This has constantly shifting time signatures between 126 and 82. All right, now I'm going to go on to the fourth movement, just a little bit of it. I should say that there is some alto or tenor clef in the cello part. Nothing that's not manageable though, and it's pretty short when it happens. All right, that is just a really terrific piece that just not very many people know about. And if you're looking for something that you're not going to have to go spend a lot of money to play, I would highly recommend looking at this one. All right, and then the Romanza. This is a single movement work. It is about a grade 4 piece, and it's just truly fantastic. Now I'm gonna say this is a piece that you would wanna pick if you don't have a super solid bass section. They're gonna be a little bored with this one. There's not a lot for them to do. Again, the score is available on IMSLP, but it is absolutely just a truly gorgeous piece of work. And I'm gonna play just a little bit of it. What I love about this one so much are the tonalities. This piece is AABA, so you better really like the melody. You're going to get it 3 different times throughout the piece. But what I really, really love about this is, again, those tonalities are fantastic. The shifting work, though, is going to all happen up in the first violin part. The only little bit of treble clef that the violas get lasts for about 3 measures, and it doesn't go beyond 3rd position. This is a highly playable piece and would be fantastic for like that middle piece in your concert sandwich. By the way, I should say that Oswald was a Finnish composer, and he was just really overshadowed at the time by Sibelius, so I really think his music certainly deserves a listen to. And then this piece, I really enjoy listening to Cindy McTee's piece of music, and I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's really, really quiet and soft at the beginning. For those of you who don't know, she's actually married to Leonard Slotkin. And it's the recording that I have of this is his orchestra performing it. This is a very long piece of music. So I want you to think this would be a good replacement maybe for the Barber Adagio for strings if you're looking for something that would be kind of like that. It shifts through minor keys quite a bit. It's primarily in F minor. Time signatures are easy. This is excellent though for teaching sustained long bows. All right, and I'm also going to say if you'll go to the website that's here, you can also request that she write a piece for your group. She does take commissions, but she does tend to only write for advanced groups. So if you want something for a younger group of students, I would probably lean more towards Connie Ellisor. And then my final selection was William Grant Still's Mother and Child. I know most of us are familiar with his other more popular work, but a lot of people don't know Mother and Child. This was originally scored for as a suite for violin and piano. This was the second movement of the work, and somebody had came along and said, oh my gosh, that's great, you need to write that for string orchestra. So he did. His music is available at William Grant Still Music. The website is there below. I wish there was a score to look at. Unlike the other composers, there's not a score for you to just grab, but it's only $17 for the score if you want to go to the website and order it. You can also order all of the parts from there as well. This is a single movement lyric essay in ternary form. It's slow, but it is just absolutely lush. It's 7 minutes, 19 seconds, and it's written in the form of a lullaby. So I'm going to play just a moment of this. I'm just going to let it keep playing as I move on to the last slide. Some of the other pieces that we recommend are the Czar's Evening Waltz by Elena Rusanova Lucas. I would probably put that more at about a 3+ piece, but it would work great for a choice selection. The Elegy for String Orchestra by Grace Williams. That one's a little more challenging to get hold of. Grace Williams is an English composer, but she's probably the most famous female composer from England for cinematic music. And then the Symphonia for Strings, if you don't know that piece by Eric Iwazan, that's a great piece. We also love the Charterhouse by Vaughan Williams. That's highly underrated. And the Wassenaar, the Sixth Symphonia, it's been attributed to Pergolesi. So you might find it listed under that. Thank you guys so much for joining us on our presentation. Please feel free to jump in and ask any questions that you might happen to have about this presentation, about the pieces that you saw us give today. And I want to say a word real quick that if you have any questions that you would like to submit to us or works that you think we should consider adding to our list, Our emails are both on this last slide, and we would love to hear from you. Any comments, questions, or additions that you would like to see us make to our list. Thank you so much for being a part of our presentation today.
Thank you, and take care.